Welcome back to Sportsworld. Lee Friedman, our guest today, joining Keith Hillier, and we're hoping Lee can come through the spring with us until he gets his licence back to train. Good to see you back in the country, firstly, Lee.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, and Keith, so much happening at the moment, isn't there, in racing, with the spring not too far away, but the big story yesterday surrounded Darren Beadman's performance, breaking the long-standing record of Billy Cook, the number of winners in a season.
Yeah, it certainly did, Bruce. 55 years old, that record, and yesterday Darren Beadman won the first at Randwick to give him that record, the number of winners in a season. In the last 11 meetings, he's ridden 18, last 11 days he's ridden 18 winners. From the last 6 meetings, he's a fabulous jockey. Very special moment in racing yesterday at Randwick.
Well, Lee, I know he rode some great winners for you, particularly with Superimposed. We'll look at that a little later, but let's go to Randwick yesterday and catch up on Darren Beadman's feat.
With 7 starts at Randwick today, Darren Beadman had plenty of chances to get his record ride. He needed only one, winning the first race.
And here is the best riding performance in Sydney for 55 years by Darren Beadman.
Beadman took 10 months to rack up 125 wins. He only started in September last year after serving a 9-month suspension in Hong Kong.
All I want to do is win a jockey's premiership, but I suppose you could say I've got the ice, the cake, the icing, the cream and the candles.
The record provided some much-needed gloss for the racing industry after a year of controversy for jockeys.
But in Darren's favour, he's been winning on horses that I don't think many other jockeys would have won on.
The only big race Beadman still wants is the Cox Plate.
With his wife, Kim, you had a remarkable interview with him, Keith. I think it was on Thursday on Radio 3UZ in Melbourne.
Yes, we saw the other side of Darren Beadman in that interview. Bruce, Darren Beadman has become a Christian. He claims that God is riding with him, that God has led him to set this record. And yesterday, look, I think that Darren Beadman did more for racing in the past couple of weeks, culminating in yesterday, that has been done in racing for months, and it has erased the negative side of racing that Jockey Tapes gave Sydney only a few weeks ago.
Well, it'd be great, Lee, Oliver in Melbourne and Beadman in Sydney, if they could get together, say, in a McKinnon Stakes, one on a 5-4 pop and one on a 6-4 pop. We'd get that rivalry we had with Selwood and Moore and Higgins and Moore, wouldn't we?
I think it'd be great because, you know, that sort of rivalry is what brings people to the races. I think it makes the meeting exciting, and it makes for good radio and TV as well.
Well, Keith, it was good radio on Thursday on 3UZ. Darren had had a couple of very bad falls in Hong Kong, and he'd also been disqualified for 9 months, as we told you a little earlier, and this is what he had to say to Keith on Thursday morning in this radio interview.
I've always believed that there was a God, but it wasn't until I hit rock bottom when I come back from Hong Kong. Like I was a shattered person, and after what happened, and I'd lost a lot of my confidence. You know, I was really in the doldrums, and that's when you really like from being a Christian, I've seen a lot of people give their hearts to the Lord when they are in desperate need and they need help, and you know, I gave my heart to the Lord in January, about 15 months ago, and since that time on, I've just found an inner strength that I'd never experienced before, and you know, and it's so fulfilling.
Fascinating interview that Darren had with Keith. His most famous ride, I think, in Australia was for you, Lee, in the Epsom Handicap of 1991 on Superimposed.
Yeah, I still rate that as probably my most exciting race day ever. There was an enormous amount of drama involved with the horse going for you know, 4 major Randwick Mile wins on end, and I just thought it was a fantastic day, and it'll probably be seen as his greatest ride ever.
Well, there's Superimposed spotlighted, Lee. Your rider in Melbourne is Damien Oliver. He's has bolted in with the premiership again this year, but look at that faultless ride from Beadman. Have you got a comparison of Sydney's best and Melbourne's best?
I think it's hard comparing them. I think it's quite clear at the moment that Beadman is the very best in Sydney. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure, as Bruce said earlier, there'll be some great clashes with him and Damien down here during the spring. I'd still rate Damien as the best in Melbourne, though.
You'd probably add that anyone could have won on Superimposed that day too.
Yeah, well, I don't think I could have.
Well, John Schreck said it was his finest, the finest ride he'd seen when we interviewed him when he retired. He said that was his best day at the races as the chief steward in Sydney, that day that Beadman brought Superimposed home. The Moonda Plate yesterday, almost spring coming, you know, in the middle of July with Sequalo particularly. What did you think of his run, Keith? He got caught wide, didn't he?
I think Norman Weymouth best summed it up after the race when he said that Sequalo was too fresh and underdone. But the encouraging thing was this leader, Rubiton, an eventual winner. He had 7 months off the scene, a knee chip removed, and yesterday he came back. It was his first weight for age test, fancy weight for age race in the depths of winter. But he passed it, and now perhaps the Liston Stakes is his test. And I think he's going to be competitive in the months to come. This is the horse that the Connections knocked back $300,000 for as a 3-year-old. Their patience was rewarded yesterday.
Hoover, he missed getting home. What about Sequalo, Lee? He looked fantastic at the end of the spring in the Moya, and then again when he beat Hariba on a track that probably didn't suit Hariba in the Linlithgow. Didn't really fire a shot in the autumn, though. Where do you rate him?
Well, Sequala's been in the unfortunate circumstance of running into probably the best crop of sprinting 3-year-olds of that year, 4-year-olds now, that we've had probably in 10 or 15 years. And he fits neatly, I think, in the Group 2, Group 3 category. But unfortunately, he's run into the Haribas and the Mahoganies and horses like that, of that ilk, that have been superior to him.
Yeah, it was interesting. Charlie said that he felt he was better than Rancher, or every bit as good after the Linlithgow. I remember him saying, I think he's a better horse than Rancher, who was probably a more exciting horse because he did it as a 2-year-old, didn't he? And
yes, Charlie's always felt he's as good or better than Hariba too. In fact, his stats line up pretty well against Hariba. We may see Hariba back Manikato Stakes Day at Moonee Valley. Well,
speaking of Manikato Stakes Day, August 19 that is, that's the first time that this new Moonee Valley track will be used. There were trials out there for the first time on Friday. Craig Willis went out and this is what he found.
You reckon behind there would have been a fair bit of sand getting flicked at you?
Unfortunately, it's so new, you know.
Champion jockey Greg Hall, just back from Asia, talking to trainer Richard Friedman about the new racing surface at Moonee Valley.
Do you reckon it's ready to race on?
No. Although come race day with 14 runners in that, mate,
tear it to pieces.
1 or 2 races it'll be gone. And if it happened to be wet.
It's taken nearly 10 months to get the Valley ready for racing, and last Friday, the first official trials, involving some of the big names for the upcoming Spring Carnival. The Friedmans had 6 runners during the morning. The stable is currently being run by Richard Friedman, while brother Lee waits out his suspension. Champion galloper Mahogany held most of the attention.
I thought he trialled beautifully this morning. He did everything we asked him to do, and he wanted to do more, which is always a good sign. We didn't allow him to do too much because it's only his first serious jump out, but a very pleasing effort.
How did Mahogany work this morning? You happy?
Yeah, more than happy. More than happy. He's on target. It's nice to be back on good horses. No disrespect to Malaysia.
Gerald Ryan has some big hopes for the spring, including the Caulfield Guineas winner, Racer's Edge.
He's been back about 8 weeks and he had 7 months off and his legs good as gold. He's pulled up good and that was the main concern. That's his first real hit out he's had since he's been back, so everything looks all right so far.
Richard Friedman believes Golden Slipper winner Flying Spur will be one of the stars during the Spring Carnival.
A horse that appears to have improved quite a lot from his 2-year-old year, which of course he needs to do. You know, all the others will improve as well. But he held his own with Mahogany and gave Mahogany quite a bit of weight. I know it's only a short trial, but it does make a difference. And yes, I was very pleased with his effort. It was very strong.
The general consensus from the experts is the track will be ready when racing resumes at the Valley on August 19, giving Richard Friedman the chance of being the king of Moonee Valley before Lee returns.
Is it going to be hard to hand the reins back?
Oh, well, I guess I go down as the first trainer in history that'll sack 150 horses and all their owners on one day, and it'll be my birthday. You know, I fully intend to hand the reins back to Lee, you know, but there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge yet, so I'll enjoy it while it's on.
I think he's got the right temperament to sack 150 horses in a day, don't you?
I think he's looking forward to it.
What's the consensus on the track?
I think it's excellent. I think anything that can produce a surface as good as what this will be has got to be a good thing for racing. And you know, I think anyone that went there Friday and complained about it isn't being realistic. I mean, it's all it can do is improve.
I think Lee used an appropriate term then. What it will be at the moment, Bruce, there's a meeting tomorrow. The Manikato Stakes Day will race there for sure, but they may drop a couple of race meetings before the Cox Plate because this is new, $7 million worth of new track, and let's not damage it too quickly.
What does it mean long term that no more heavy tracks at Moonee Valley?
No more slow tracks.
Right.
There'll never be a slow-rated or heavy-rated track at Moonee Valley again.
It means in October the Cox Plate will be run on great turf, which is so important, isn't it?
Which it generally is.
Yeah, well, it is. Very hard turf normally, often. Speaking of the Cox Plate, Lamb Tara's won the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes this morning over 1.5 miles. Wonderful races. Pentar on the outside trying to tackle him. This horse, Lamb Tara, is owned by the Sheikhs. He won the English Derby at his second start at Epsom. He's now won the King George at his third. It would be like, Lee, you having a 2-year-old who won the Fernhill in Sydney in the autumn and then spurled, came out, won the Victoria Derby in the fastest time in 40 years and then broke the track record in the Cox Plate. This is what this horse has done.
Yeah, he's obviously an outstanding racehorse, and as an interesting sidelight to those wins, Bruce, when he won the English Derby, as you said, he was prepared in Dubai, and my information was that from the time he left England till the time he went back and stepped out on Epsom on Derby Day, he never worked on grass in between, just worked on the sand track there.
You went to Dubai, did you get a chance to see this horse?
I didn't see this horse, unfortunately. He was in England and I didn't see him race there. He was due to race in the Irish Derby while I was there, but apparently the ground they considered was a bit too hard for the horse, so it's very exciting to watch him now and see what he's doing in just 3 starts.
Keith, I read with a lot of interest that horses like Scalacci that Lee's trained over the years and a number of other horses may be entered for races at Hollywood Park later this year. This whole exchange of horses coming to Australia and leaving Australia looks to be exciting.
I want to ask Lee the degree of intent to go there. I know you've entered.
Well, yes, well, the boys have entered. Obviously, the way they're thinking and the way the owners are obviously thinking, there are horses that are involved there that there aren't really, a horse such as Scalacci, I would think, there isn't really a suitable race for him during the spring, given that, you know, in recent times, around about that time, we've been getting quite a few shifty and wet tracks. So with that in the back of their mind, I'm sure that's why the horse has been entered for that race in America.
And briefly, you saw Double Trigger, who's win the Ascot Gold Cup, vintage crop, I think, was 4th. What do you think of him? Because he's going to be the glamour horse if he comes to Australia for the Melbourne Cup.
Well, he's very good. You know, you've got to remember the Ascot Gold Cup's 2.5 miles, and he was allowed to lead under his own steam. But having said that, he was very impressive, and I'm sure Mr. Bowler will see that the same way.
Oh dear. Ladbrokes, incidentally, already have installed him 14-to-1 favourite, Double Trigger for the Melbourne Cup.
It's great that we're getting so much publicity for our race. Lee, I hope you can keep coming in for a few weeks.
Look forward to it, Bruce.
Terrific. We might bring Max back next week, Keith.
All right, it was good to see. I remembered the face, I just couldn't put a name to it.
How quickly they forget, Lee.
Ah, yes.
A break. Diving after this, Jodie Rogers.
Probably one of the fittest divers in the world for the girls. She's got terrific form, natural form, and dedication. And, well, without that, you've gone.